All right, welcome in on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. I leave to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis tomorrow. It's going to be a fun week out there. NFL convention offseason will truly get rolling. So it's time for our 49ers pending free agent series. We're going to go through the players of the 49ers have yet to re-sign for the 2023 season and discuss where they might be playing football next year. And maybe they'll be back with the 49ers. Who knows? But we're going to start off with the biggest fish of them all, and that is the quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, who's done so much for the 49ers, helped resurrect the team back in 2017. Remember, the 49ers were 0-8 in 2017 when they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo the day after getting obliterated in Philadelphia in the rain. C.J. Beathard was the quarterback, got pummeled in that game. I was on the flight home from Philly in 17, my first year covering the Niners, and that's when the trade was consummated. Second round pick to New England. Jimmy Garoppolo back to the 49ers. Took about a month for him to learn the playbook and take over as QB. Entered for an injured C.J. Beathard against Seattle. Threw the touchdown pass to Lewis Murphy. And then the rest was history. They lost the game against Seattle because they were already so far behind. But the 49ers went 5-0 to close the 2017 season. And they became the first team in NFL history to finish 6-10 after starting 1-10. So what Garoppolo did was remarkable, but the problem is that his best and healthiest football came that first year in 2017 because he tore his ACL in 2018, came back with a vengeance in 2019, played really well, helped the 49ers get all the way to the Super Bowl, but the injuries returned in 2020, a couple high ankle sprains, 2021, calf strain. There was a torn thumb ligament, and then there was a torn shoulder capsule ligament, which actually forced Garoppolo to later undergo surgery. And then there was obviously this 2022 season where Garoppolo came back as a backup, took over for Trey Lance, who also got hurt, but then Garoppolo fractured his foot. So where will Jimmy Garoppolo play in 2023? That is the question. These, to me, are the top options, and we can't just cross off 49ers off the list. I'll talk about that in a little bit, although it is extremely unlikely. But remember, this time last year, the 49ers were also talking as if Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't going to be on the team for 2022. He ended up on the team for 2022. Does that mean they were lying? No. It means that stuff in the NFL evolves. NFL stands for not for long. And that means that any truths that you think might be evident right now, they don't have to be true for very long because stuff can change really quickly in the National Football League. But the five teams listed, maybe in order of likelihood: the Falcons, the Texans, the New York Jets with Robert Saleh as their coach, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the New Orleans Saints. The Falcons, to me, really interesting under Arthur Smith because this was a run-heavy team that was running a ton of play action this past year. Run first, run-heavy team, operating the play action that would try to accentuate yards after the catch whenever the quarterback actually was passing. I do not think that Garoppolo is naturally suited for that kind of scheme. I think he's more of a shotgun, drop back, spread it out kind of quarterback. That's who he was in college at Eastern Illinois. That's who he was going to be with the Patriots. But the 49ers actually tried to change Jimmy Garoppolo, and successfully to a large extent, obviously. He just got hurt so often. But the 49ers are a run-first scheme under Kyle Shanahan, and they run a lot of play action, but that's actually something that Jimmy had to pick up with the 49ers. Didn't do a lot of it in New England. Didn't do a lot of it in college at Eastern Illinois. He had to learn how to turn his back to the defense and reacquire his target on the play fake. Atlanta is going to be a heavy play action team that's going to do a lot of the similar concepts as Jimmy Garoppolo executed with the 49ers. He's proven he could succeed in that type of system. But to me, I think it's important to emphasize that that is not his natural type of system. He's got the quick release. I think he's best out of the gun. The 49ers in 2021 moved to the shotgun when they were struggling around that Rams game midseason, and that helped turn their season around. It helped turn Jimmy Garoppolo's season around. So then you go to the Texans. What are the Texans going to do? Well, the Texans have Bobby Slowick as their offensive coordinator. He's worked with Jimmy Garoppolo in recent seasons for the 49ers. There is a lot of respect from Bobby Slowick going in Jimmy Garoppolo's direction. I think there's also a lot of respect for Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins going in Jimmy Garoppolo's direction. It will be interesting to see what kind of offense Bobby Slowick ports to the Houston Texans because he's going to be in charge of that side of the ball. DeMeco Ryans, the head coach, is, I don't think, going to be touching much of the offense. Bobby Slowick is going to have a lot of power in Houston. So if he wants to run a shotgun, quick release kind of game, Jimmy Garoppolo can be his man. If he wants to run a play action game or a hybrid, well, Jimmy Garoppolo's done that with the 49ers. So the Texans with a lot of cap space, that obviously is a possibility. Then people are talking about the New York Jets. Robert Saleh's obviously there. Zach Wilson is absolutely terrible. The Jets might be a decent quarterback away from actually contending because they were playing some pretty good defense this past season. So Garoppolo, from that perspective, makes a lot of sense. He could be in the same city that Joe Namath and the same franchise that Joe Namath played for several decades ago. To me, that would be an intriguing pairing, especially under the New York City spotlight. You know, the media out there in New York City, they obviously would be making all those Joe Namath comparisons with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think the minute that he signs there, if it does happen with the New York Jets. Tampa Bay, obviously, looking to replace Tom Brady. Could be a system-wide fit for Jimmy Garoppolo because he was drafted in 2013 to be the heir apparent for Tom Brady. So that could work. 2014 draft, actually, for Jimmy Garoppolo. 2013 was his last season with Eastern Illinois. And then there are the New Orleans Saints. To me, the Saints, obviously, Jameis Winston probably not going to be around there anymore. Taysom Hill, yeah, right. He's not a quarterback. I mean, he's a nice weapon. They need a QB in New Orleans. And they're in a tough cap situation, but they're going to be releasing guys. They're going to be making maneuvers here over the next few weeks to where they can open up some space relatively quickly. And then, if we talk about them potentially signing somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo, we should expand this to a salary discussion because get ready for QB musical chairs either way that we go. I think this is going to be the biggest offseason of QB rotation, QB switching teams that the NFL has ever seen. So buckle your seatbelts for that because it's also going to affect the salary structure, which has changed so much over recent seasons. Take a look at this. These are QB salaries average per year. Remember when Jimmy Garoppolo signed his long-term deal with the 49ers in 2017, it was the largest contract in NFL history at the time. That contract was since renegotiated, so Garoppolo was down to only $7 million a year this year, plus the incentive. So he's way down this list. But Garoppolo at the time, I think, was like $26 or $27 million per year. Look where that would rank now. It would rank number 13 or 14, number 14 of all NFL quarterbacks. The price of NFL QBs has skyrocketed in recent seasons to the point where Aaron Rodgers is set to make $50.2 million this year. Russell Wilson's deal with Denver, $49 million. Kyler Murray, $46.1. Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed $230 million. Terrible deal, obviously, with the Browns, but it's still up here. $46 million per year. Mahomes is at $45. All of a sudden, Mahomes, who signed that mega deal, $450 million, not that long ago. I think it was in 2022 for 10 years. Yeah. His looks relatively affordable now at $45 million per year. $30 million per year, which in 2018 would have been the number one quarterback contract, now belongs to Matt Ryan and ranks number 12 in the NFL. So a big question is, how much money is Jimmy Garoppolo going to command? Because this is going to be an interesting scenario. The 49ers are already assuming that he's going to be out of their price range, which is why Kyle Shanahan was so dismissive about Garoppolo potentially returning next year. So where is he going to land as far as the price spectrum goes in the view of these other teams? Well, first things first, don't forget that Garoppolo, I'm going to talk about the comp pick a little bit later, but there's key fact number one. Garoppolo is coming off an excellent 2022 season. You can have a look at this. This compares Garoppolo to the 49ers' other quarterbacks. Blue is good. Red is bad. You've got Garoppolo 2017 at the very bottom. Garoppolo 2022 up here. Adjusted net yards per attempt is actually the one statistic that's most correlated to the NFL MVP award. The winner of adjusted net yards per attempt, which factors in touchdown passes and interceptions to larger passing efficiency, is often regarded as the most valuable player in the league. Garoppolo and Purdy, obviously both really good this year. Garoppolo led the league in DVOA. Purdy a little bit better in EPA per game, but they're both really good there. Success rate good. And perhaps most notably, Garoppolo was really good in the turnover department. He had an interception rate of only 1.3% this year, which would have ranked number 3 of all NFL quarterbacks. Brady was ahead of him, but not much more ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, people are going to argue, okay, yeah, well, how much of this is created by Shanahan's scheme? And of course, some of it is. And of course, I think any quarterback's success in the NFL is dependent on the scheme. It is a team sport. A lot of people can't seem to get this into their heads or wrap their brains around it, but football is not an individual sport. For any QB in the league, it is a team sport. Joe Montana needed Bill Walsh. Joe Montana enjoyed Jerry Rice. Steve Young also enjoyed Jerry Rice. I mean, Steve Young enjoyed Mike Shanahan, his play caller. So it's how a play caller and a coach and a quarterback meld together, and how that quarterback melds with both the play caller and the surrounding skill position talent. We measure efficiency through that lens. And through that lens, Jimmy Garoppolo was damn good here in the 2022 season. He showed that he could execute the 49ers offense the way that it needed to be executed. There's another right here. I put this open on Twitter. This is a good look at Jimmy Garoppolo's efficiency. Actually, Jimmy Garoppolo's aggressiveness and his average depth of target, which is another big point of debate for a lot of folks. Open this up. Okay, here you see average depth of targets on the horizontal axis, aggressiveness percentage, how often a quarterback is trying to throw in the tight windows, is on the vertical axis. Somebody like Mitch Trubisky is throwing deep and throwing aggressively a lot. As Mitch Trubisky's dot will prove, that's not necessarily correlated with being a good quarterback. Marcus Mariota for Atlanta also wasn't good this year. Had a really high average depth of target because he didn't throw all that often. So when he did throw, it was a bit further downfield. And a high aggressiveness percentage above the league median. Yet he also wasn't good. Look where Mahomes is, way down here. So Mahomes is not throwing deep very often. It's a lower average depth of target and also a lower aggressiveness percentage. Yet we all agree that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. Brock Purdy was also really good this year. He wasn't aggressive, nor did he throw far downfield. So obviously these guys are playing within the context of the scheme. Here's Garoppolo, by the way. I'm circling him. Garoppolo's right by Herbert, right by Tom Brady, not too far from Joe Burrow. Matthew Stafford actually really close. Kyler Murray close. So, quarterbacks with good years and quarterbacks with bad years are all nestled in the same area. This air yardage argument, to try to discredit a quarterback has got to stop, because you're not going to tell me that Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes are game manager QBs or QBs that are somehow incapable. These offenses are intentionally throwing shorter to set up yards after the catch. The average air yardage in the NFL has gone down by over a yard over the past decade. Teams are realizing that tackling is poor on the defensive side, and the best way to expose opposing defenses is to set your receivers up for yards after the catch. So, along those lines, you go here and you see Jimmy Garoppolo's efficiency over the course of his entire 49ers career. We don't only have to focus it on 2022. You could see it over his entire 49ers career. If we measure him within the context of how well he's executed Kyle Shanahan's system, the results when Garoppolo has been healthy have been overwhelmingly good. 2017 was the awesome year that earned him the contract, 7.6 adjusted net yards per attempt, nearly a 40% DVOA, really accurate too, completion percentage over expectation. He did turn the ball over a little bit more than maybe the 49ers would have liked, but still above average in that regard. In 2022, he was back to those numbers with the 49ers star-studded cast. Not as accurate, though, which I think is something that is worth monitoring, especially coming off of that shoulder injury. So he obviously benefited from the supporting cast more than he did from a weaker supporting cast in 2017. But the point is that Garoppolo's efficiency was back, in large part because he avoided some of those bad mistakes. I think that he still has a few years left in him, so I think he's going to try to cash out and use the fact that he has executed Kyle Shanahan's system to such efficiency as his greatest calling card in contract negotiations. That's key fact number one. Garoppolo coming off an excellent season. But then there's also key fact number two. Jimmy Garoppolo's durability or lack thereof is also a major question mark surrounding him. Now, people can argue that all Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks get hurt. Maybe it's Kyle Shanahan's fault. Maybe it's this scheme's fault. That's TBD, right? We're going to see. We could look at these injuries on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't seem that there's any type of rhyme or reason to them. I've always advocated for the 49ers to improve their pass protection. They're actually working on that. They got to invest more in the line this offseason. That's important for Lance, for Purdy, whoever plays next year. But in the case of Jimmy Garoppolo, we look at the injuries and we say, okay, he's been hurt a lot. Obviously, that's why the 49ers initially moved to insulate the position beside him and then behind him, and then obviously looked to insulate the position with a long-term plan. And that plan was named Trey Lance, who might be the 49ers week one starter this next year. So you take Garoppolo's health considerations and health shortcomings into account when you look at a potential next contract, and you wonder what weighs more: the fact that he's coming off an excellent year, that he's executed the system of the 49ers well and should be able to execute another system well. He's an experienced NFL quarterback who can generally throw accurately, who's cut down his interception rate. Do you weigh that more, or are you worried about the injuries more? To me, you can always find a middle ground contractually in these things. The middle ground is often found through some guaranteed money, but maybe a shorter deal, and then incentives. Last year, the 49ers found ultimate middle ground with Jimmy Garoppolo when the average per year was only $7 million, but he could make somewhere up to $12 or $13 million with his contract. Maybe we see Jimmy sign something like that again. Maybe we see him sign a shorter deal that's obviously worth more than last year's because he's not recovering from surgery at this point in time, but maybe we see an incentive-laden deal. But given the fact that this is going to be a crazy amount of QB musical chairs, and given the fact that all of these teams listed on the screen below me might need a quarterback and probably do need a quarterback, there should be a market for Jimmy Garoppolo to sign potentially something even longer. Remember that the original deal that Garoppolo signed with the 49ers in 2018 had an out after year 2. So it wasn't a damaging deal for the 49ers by any stretch of the imagination, because the first 2 seasons, well, obviously, they went to the Super Bowl in 2019. They were happy to pay Jimmy Garoppolo that money in 2019. The ACL tear in 2018, though, was unfortunate. But in 2020 and 2021, he played on a deal that didn't have any more guaranteed money. So the 49ers elected to keep him, and NFL deals are structured that way. Another team can sign Jimmy Garoppolo for 4 or 5 years, make the guaranteed portion of it come earlier, add some incentives in there, and then you can eject out of this if he keeps on getting hurt about 3 years down the line. That could be how Garoppolo is able to structure it, or he could go for something a little bit shorter term, go try to prove again that he could stay healthy for a year if it's behind a better offensive line and a better system than what the 49ers did to protect him, and then he can cash out. 32 years old, so still some options for Jimmy Garoppolo, especially since his game is not predicated on speed. His arm did recover from the shoulder surgery, which I do think is big. Don't forget, from the 49ers perspective, that it's good for them if Jimmy Garoppolo goes and signs elsewhere, assuming they don't try to retain him after all these quarterback twists and turns. It's good for them if he signs for as much money as possible elsewhere, because that means that they can get the highest possible compensatory pick in return. If Garoppolo signs for a contract that is in the 95th percentile of value around the league, they can get the maximum in return for him, and that would be a 3rd-round compensatory selection in the 2024 draft. If it's above the 90th percentile, that'd be a 4th-round pick. Garoppolo is probably going to command a significant portion of money, and if that money does come from another team, the 49ers will be in line to recoup some draft value from Jimmy Garoppolo, which to me in the larger picture is significant because they were trying to trade him last offseason, and they couldn't find any suitors for a trade because Garoppolo had undergone that shoulder surgery. He announced he's going to undergo it right around the time of this NFL Combine, which I'm going to tomorrow in Indianapolis. So everybody's like, oh, God, the 49ers aren't going to be able to get anything in return for Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, it turns out they were able to re-sign him for 1 season. He gave them a lot this past year. He saved the season with his play. It was really good. Then he got hurt. And now if he does walk in free agency, they will, in fact, be able to get draft compensation in return. And the more that he gets paid, the more the 49ers will get. So 49ers fans should be cheering for Jimmy Garoppolo to get paid as much as possible. So these are the options: Falcons, Texans, Jets, Bucs, and Saints. And hey, don't rule out the San Francisco 49ers. You can never say never in the NFL, especially right now as we're waiting for Brock Purdy's surgery to alleviate itself. We're waiting for the swelling to alleviate so he can actually have the surgery. We're waiting for Trey Lance to be fully cleared, although Lance has resumed throwing this weekend. So he's back at throwing, back at running, full clearance coming around OTAs. I will say, though, that this is very likely where Garoppolo is going to play. I think that the relationship with Shanahan, I think it's one that he's looking forward to turning the page from, moving somewhere else. Maybe he was a little bit more appreciated. The 49ers didn't do the greatest job of that with Jimmy Garoppolo. And obviously, we all know how the most recent chapter ended with all the quarterbacks hurt, including Garoppolo this past season. And the 49ers have not been the best location for QBs to stay healthy. So the next chapter for Jimmy is going to be really, really interesting. All right, everybody, like the video, sub to the channel. Hope this explained the situation. It's going to be a fun offseason. A lot of this happening, including a ton of QB musical chairs. Everybody take care.